Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, today we want to talk a little bit about why we need to take personal control in the things that we have. And this just ties directly into everything that we talk about on this channel as far as controlling the devices in our homes. Of course, the Switch to Linux channel and brand started when I looked at the Windows 10 EULA and said, hell no. And I just started looking around at other options. I knew Mac was not for me, so I started looking at other options. I'm like, okay, let's have another look at this Linux thing. History was made, right? But the reality is I moved off of Windows 7 onto Linux, and now I'm pretty much exclusive Linux everywhere. I started to build extra servers. I started to look into extra backup protocols. I looked at safeguarding data better, all sorts of different things. Now, what has happened is a buzzword called privacy started shooting itself all over the place, and capitalistic societies like taking the latest buzzwords and creating cool products around it. This happened in the VPNs. This is why, even though I have VPN affiliates and do talk about them occasionally, and there are legitimate uses for a VPN company, a VPN is more of a fad product than it is a useful product in most cases. And for reasons I've cited that's beyond the scope of this particular video. But suffice it to say, there are times you need it, there are times you don't. But when companies start getting involved and start selling products, now we have a whole scope of privacy companies that are out and about and adding themselves into the world and trying to sell themselves to privacy-centered YouTube channels and other things like that, so that we all take supporter sponsor money to talk about the latest and greatest privacy company that is effectively doing all of the same stuff as everybody else. And they have the same EULA, they have the same data collection. In many cases, they have the same trackers and analytics. That's not always the case, but it begs a few questions looking at the various elements. And the point is, we got into this big privacy mess and this privacy debacle by giving up all of our individual control to other companies in the first place. Giving that data to other companies is not going to solve the problem. What is going to solve the problem is when we come back and take control and accountability and responsibility for the things we need to do. And so, with this in mind, I want to use two articles as a jumping point to explain what I am talking about. The first one, of course, was the conservative debacle of the week, and this is the Liberty Safe issue. I do not own a Liberty Safe, nor have I ever shilled a Liberty Safe. To give you the brief background here, there is a bad guy that the FBI alleged was a bad dude, and he went out, and what he did is did things the FBI was looking into, and then they got a warrant. Now, that warrant may or may not have included everything involved in the guy's house, may or may not have included everything in the guy's safe. I have not seen that warrant, and I do not know what is about, and this is not a video on the politics or the lawsuit or legal issues of the matter, so I don't care for the purpose of this video. What is important for the purpose of this video is that Liberty Safe has maintained a customer list of backdoors of everybody's safe. And so the FBI sees a giant Liberty Safe, and rather than calling in their expert safe cracker, they just called the company. They reach out. Hey, Liberty Safe. Yeah, this is Bob, your buddy with the FBI. Yeah. We got this bad dude here. Can you get us into the thing? Oh, great. 5, 2, 7. Great. Thank you very much. And push comes to shove. Actually, there was no shove. There was barely a push. There was an ask, and Liberty Safe gave the FBI backdoor access to this gentleman's safe. Now, this caused a giant debacle. They got all terrified because of that whole beer drinking situation. And what ended up happening now is that Liberty Safe came out and said, hey, we are now giving everybody the ability to delete those things. Just a warning, if you delete these back doors, we can't help you get in the event you lose access to your safe. And so this definitely bears with it a thought and a concern, but notice the point of responsibility. So now Liberty Safe goes into a company that at least has the possibility of saying, we have sold you a safe. It is now your safe. You do with it what you want. But if you get locked out of your safe, don't come crying to us, which is exactly the type of safe I would want. Okay, I have a number of safes. Not all of them are in this van. In fact, most of them are not. But I have safes at friends' house. I have safes in storage units. And if there's no back end anything, there's no company I could call, be like, hey, could you help me get into my safe? Maybe in theory, I could call them up, be like, this is the lock on the I don't know. There might be possibility they could get a rekey into it based on the serial number of something. I don't know. But the bottom line is nobody really knows that I own these individual safes, and the only way to get into them is with the key that I have physical access to, and the keys are spread between different safes. Yes, it's safeception I have going on. And so as we are looking at these different elements here, what we see is this company has these safes, and with these safes, they had a back door that they were able to say, oh, this dude? Oh, sure. Now, it does sound like it's more complicated. It does sound like they had an actual warrant. They confirmed the warrant and all this, but then the point still being that they maintain backdoor. And if somebody else is maintaining your back door of your privacy infrastructure, well, somebody still has a back door. And that raises the concern. Now, for us over here in the Linux community, the more interesting case is Jitsi. Of course, Jitsi is a company that was the first of the major well-working privacy groups, meet.jitsi.si. How do you even tell somebody about it? Meet.jit.si. Horrible username, URL, by the way, because you can't easily say what it is without spelling it out. I don't know, at least it's small enough. Now, what they did is starting, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I think it was 2 weeks ago now. Starting off August 24th, they no longer support the anonymous account creation. Now, they are not allowing you to create an account with them or anything. You have to log in with either Google, GitHub, which is Microsoft, or Facebook. Now, TechLore did a great video breakdown on this, and in his video, they said, well, why didn't they allow other more privacy-focused secure logins? There are indeed other privacy-focused secure logins, but of course, what you notice about these three, Facebook, Google, and Microsoft, is that room can be tied back to an individual user. This protects Jitsi from all sorts of weird stuff. It also basically says if somebody comes down to Jitsi and says, hey, we needed you to check for your logs to see was so-and-so on a room such day, they're like, I don't know, go ask Google or Microsoft or Facebook. I don't know. But the point being is that now you have to use one of the three bad big tech companies in order to use the free Jitsi. Now, initially I looked at this and said, this is probably a really bad thing, but on the surface, it does look bad. But as the more I got to thinking about this, it actually almost makes a little bit of sense, because what they're doing here is saying, yeah, our instance here, we're going to lock it down. Why? This protects our company and our brand. They're not maintaining any lists that could possibly be compromised. If they were like, well, we're allow you to create your own account on our system to create Jitsi meetings. Well, they didn't want to do that, because now if the people come knocking on their door, they would be required to hand data over in their privacy company. So they still have no data. Brilliant. Let's give all the data to the other big tech companies. Now, I do believe that they probably should have used, as TechLore said, they should have used some of the other methodologies out there to say, let's use was it like simple login or secure? I don't know. There's a few privacy login solutions that are different than Google, GitHub, and Facebook that they could have used. They didn't. So definitely, there's things they could have done differently here, but it does still protect their core brand, because their core brand at their core is to develop the Jitsi software. And they say down here, hosting a deployment of your own Jitsi meeting. Now, if you're following along our Thursday shows where we use Jitsi, none of us are using any of that stuff, because I have my own self-hosted Jitsi server that we're using. So it gets rid of that individual solution. Now, this gets us right back into the topic of this video, why we need personal control because I have the personal control over that server. Now, I could do it with even more personal control and move out of my van and into a giant house and put up a big network server and have everything there. Of course, I'm still reliant on whoever provides me internet access, but I'm holding the physical machines and you may pry it from my cold, dead hands. But the reality is I'm hosting the Jitsi on one of the cloud providers out there. And that is a good medium down the line, because as we talk about doing these or utilizing these other services, what should you be doing cloud backups? I think that doing cloud backups, or at least some form of off-site backup, is not a bad thing to do. I do like the overall principle as long as you do it right. The problem is if you utilize a backup solution company, you are more open to seeing what's going on than if you rent up something like DigitalOcean. And if you bring up a DigitalOcean, then what you're going to do in that case is you're going to be able to spin up some server that there's really no exact tie exactly what's going on with it. You know what I mean? In which case that there's no single point that says, okay, let's go ahead and say DigitalOcean is explicitly backup. I know if you have a DigitalOcean account, you're doing backups. But DigitalOcean isn't a backup. It is just a cloud provider account. You can spin something up, and unless they have real reason to look, they don't know exactly what you're doing. Now, do they have the capability? Yes. This is why if you're using it for offsite backups, you want to make sure everything is encrypted on your own device before it goes out there. That definitely solves some of the problems. You're still technically doing it yourself. So in point summary so far, privacy companies are a fad. They're not really private. The reason is the law requires cooperation. I don't blame Liberty Safe or Jitsi for the two specific decisions that they've made, because you can't fight the limitless pockets of the government. And if they come in with a warrant, you have no choice to comply, because you're either going to comply or you're going to have everything seized, thrown in jail, and they'll just take what they want, and they'll take more than they asked initially. And so I understand that, but this is why giving your data to a, quote, privacy company is not nearly as good as learning how to do everything yourself. Now, you can create a lot of these servers locally. You can get yourself a Raspberry Pi or a used up computer, just an old computer that's really hard to use everywhere else. You can spin up a local OMV for server backups. You can spin up a local Nextcloud service. You can do all sorts of fun things like that without a real big deal. And in that case, you're not relying even on a service like DigitalOcean. You need to maintain your own infrastructure. And these are the types of things that you should be doing. Now, there are obviously some concerns. The first is you need more responsibility. If you get out of your Google account, you can always go back and, oh, please, Mr. Google, Daddy Google, please let me in. And as long as you have the required information, Daddy Google will let you back in, because Daddy Google happens to have the ability to do that because they have control over everything. But if you are the one doing all of the things on your site, the challenge that you have is you are now responsible for it. If you lose access, you lose everything. That's a risk. Now, there's ways to do it. We're not going to cover it in this particular video, but there's ways to do it right. Secondly, you're going to need to learn a little bit more. And this is something that our culture doesn't like to spend the time to learn more things. We don't want to do anything. We want to take it easy. My work's done. I gotta entertain myself. The reality is we have got to sit back and just start learning a few things. It's not difficult running these servers, whether you're doing it on a little microcomputer at your home or whether you're doing it on Linode or DigitalOcean. It's not really difficult, but it does take a little bit of time to learn how these things are doing. But you're going to be a better person for learning more. You're going to be able to solve through more problems. You're going to be able to ask more questions. You're going to be able to figure out the thing. It's going to build your confidence when you learn how to do a lot of these things. Trust me, it's going to be a good thing if you do. And the third major concern is that it's going to cost you a little bit more. We've heard these grumblings, 5-10 years ago that privacy will become a luxury of the rich. And it's true. My my escapade into privacy in some cases has cost me a little bit more. In some cases, it's actually cost me a little bit financially less, as I'm not looking to say, oh, I'm running out of space in my Google account. I got to pay Google more money now. I don't really need to do that. I figure out how to do all these types of things myself. But there's ways to do it. You need to take that responsibility. You need to do a little bit of learning, and you might need to invest a little bit into it. Now, of course, there's a couple ways to start. The first is pick yourself up a Raspberry Pi or some other similar board. There's the Orange Pis out. There's a lot of different single board computers out there, or just head to a salvage yard or a secondhand store. See if you can just find an old computer. I was like, oh, this thing can't possibly run modern operating system. Nope, but it can run a Linux server, and you can use that to start out. Of course, you can also use things like DigitalOcean, which we've talked about here. I do have an affiliate link for DigitalOcean, tlm.li/DOH, tlm.li/DOH. That's going to get you $200 good on servers, good for 60 days. You can spin up all the servers you want completely free. And with that, you can just try out different servers. You can try out a Nextcloud. You can try out a Jellyfin, all these different servers. And we have tutorials on some of these, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about them more into the future as well. But the overall principle here is that we need to take personal control, and using DigitalOcean is a good step in that. And you can try it out risk-free. Don't rely on it until you're pretty confident. You've done some upgrade cycles. You've done some backups of the things you're doing. And of course, don't sign up with Google or GitHub. Okay, sign up with your own email address. Gets you just a little bit more privacy in maintaining what you're doing there. But use that link, tlm.li/DOH. is going to get you $200 good for 60 days. With that, thank you for watching, and we will see you all next time. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.